Okay. I haven't done this in a minute, David.
Okay.
And
you're fired up.
I'm very excited. I'm gonna be flexing all the muscles, mental muscles, all of the excitement and enjoy and expectation about this conversation. What's interesting about this conversation, though, that I want everyone to kind of understand is you and I have been having this conversation every Saturday morning for quite a while now.
3 or 4 months.
For like, So, and as we've been having this conversation, your life has been dramatically changing and adjusting and shifting. And yes, we're going to talk about this book, but also just all of the opportunities that are coming your way, what's happening, how you're even thinking about this book. And then I think this book took you a long time to really write even and put together because you've put a lot of effort, both history, upbringing, coaching. And so I'm really looking forward to this because we are both relaunching the Full Vantage podcast. And I wanted to have a meaningful conversation, and that's how this all began. This whole thing, what we're doing here, this new studio that we're getting to use, this warehouse downtown Denver that's a huge gift. I'm viewing this even as a really marker in my own life, like this moment.
Yeah.
And so, which I know you love that stuff. Like you love all of those types of things that are just moments worth remembering.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank everyone that's joining us, everyone that's here as we record and in this space. And then just know this, we've been working on this for a while.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, okay? But the reason I started the podcast was because two of my really good friends that don't know each other, one was on the West Coast, or still is on the West Coast, one is still on the East Coast, both told me that I needed to. And I think we just need to start listening to our friends more.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so what happened was they both said, you need to start a podcast and just put a mic to the conversations that you want to have.
Yeah.
And so really that's what you and I are doing today with the compilation of the conversations we've been having over the past 4 months, and then really centered on the release of The Lion Is You.
Yeah.
Your new book. And so we're going to be talking about this book. We're going to be referencing this book. But we're not going to necessarily open it because that's what we want you to do. is purchase this book, check this book out, or just honestly simply be inspired enough to do something.
Yeah.
And so let's begin at somewhat of the beginning, but if you don't mind, David, just introduce yourself and then kind of what you do, and then and a little bit of the background of maybe just even the moment that you thought you should write a book. Okay, so who you are, what you're doing, what was the moment you knew that you were going to maybe put this together in a book?
Yeah. So my name is David Gerber. Start there.
David Gerber, if you missed it, Gerber. Here we go.
Just a quick, little bit of background is, I grew up all over the Midwest. My dad was in the military, and so moved every 2 to 3 years, and then found myself back in Denver later, in my later in life. And I'm an executive coach. I work with professional athletes and executives. A lot of it's around mental performance and understanding, what blocks us from the life that we want. And so a lot of the work I do with clients has a lot to do with the realm of the world that you don't know. So one of the things I always say to people is like, there's the realm of the world that you know. Like most of us know how to drive a car or read a book or whatever it is. There's the realm of the world that we know that we don't know, which is, like most of us don't know how to fly a plane, right? So you know that you don't know that. But then there's this, I think those two things equal about 2% of the world. I think the other 98% is what you don't know. And most people try to guard against that and try to avoid it. And but what I find is the most elite performers, or what we call meta performers, they get excited about that. They're like, man, what I don't know. That's fascinating. There's blind spots I have, and there's blocks that I have, and what if I could really enjoy this life and the ups and the downs, the failures, the successes, all those things. So that's what I work with clients on is what they don't know about how they're getting their own way or how they're blocking themselves from the life that they want. So with athletes, executives, it's so fun. I just love it. And then something I've gotten into the last few years is this thing called lion tracking. And I always distinguish that from lion hunting because it's not hunting the lions. I mean, lions are such beautiful creatures to me. I can't imagine personally ever shooting one. They're just beautiful. And so for me, the tracking, just for people contextually, what lion tracking is it's like going on safari, but the majority of the safari is on foot, out in the complete wild. So it's not a zoo. It's not a safari park. It's not even a game reserve. It is the wild. There's no fences out there. You're out of the vehicle. You're on foot. And the primary objective for me is, number one, just to be out in nature and see what nature gives you. Or see what God gives you through nature. It's really fascinating because even though the main tracker that I go with is one of the best in the world, and we're in an area where there's decent lion activity, there's no guarantees. There's no certainty around it. It's so fun because you just never know what you're going to find out there. And it's almost like, it's like either God's going to give you a lion that day, or an elephant, or a buffalo, or he's not. And you almost, even though you can really get, again, have experts that are doing it, you don't have a guarantee you're going to find them. So but the objective for me is, generally speaking, is to be out there to get really great encounters with wild lions on foot at as close a distance as the lions are comfortable with, in a way that doesn't necessarily disrupt their world, right? It's more of like an observance thing. And for me, because there's an energy that I think is exuded in all of the wild out there, but specifically with lions, there's an energy that they exude that, for me, sends a shockwave through your soul. And it's something that I've never felt before. And so, especially when, and we can get into this later if you want, but especially when, so sometimes if you get close enough to the lions, they will growl at you, which is it's an experience. It's almost like when you hear like a strum of a guitar and you can feel the vibration of that.
Yeah.
It's that goes through the ground and in through your soul, and it feels just amazing. And then if the lions are feisty that day for whatever reason, there's times that they'll charge at you. So 7 or 8 times I've had a wild lion run at me full speed, 50 miles an hour. One of them got as close as 6 feet. And that is like a whole nother ripple through every cell of your body that for me feels, there's a little bit of fear involved. Actually, there's a lot. But what's funny is the dominant emotion is not fear. The dominant emotion is actually aliveness. And that's one of my key things is there's such an intersection between aliveness and fear that people usually run away from fear rather than run into it. And so I encourage people to run into fear and realize that the sense of feeling of aliveness I think we long for is in the midst of fear. So anyway, so that's a bit of what I do. Then you asked me, when did I start to write the book? What's interesting about this book is, so I actually started it 5 years ago, and it has transformed so many times in the 5 years. And so the book I originally decided to write 5 years ago, this book is so different than that. Because 5 years ago, I had never even tracked lions before. And so originally it was I had done a TED Talk in 2021, and I was supposed to do a TED Talk in 2020 in New York, and obviously COVID had an issue with that, so we didn't do it. It was supposed to be March of 2020. It was literally supposed to be weeks after COVID hit, and so then that kept getting pushed. And then just to give the audience context, I had how to say this. I had a heartbreaking divorce that began in December of 2020. And so I was supposed to give the TED Talk in March of 2020, end up going through a heartbreaking divorce in December of 2020 that was initiated by my ex. And so then I ended up giving my TED Talk 3 months after my divorce began. And I still remember, and I talk about this in the book, I tell the story about this, of how that all kind of transpired. And just, it was this interesting thing where I'm experiencing one of the highest highs of my life of giving a TEDx talk, and then also going through one of the most difficult times of deepest values of my life, and the intersection of that was wild. So I get into that in the book as well, and just what I learned from that. So then a few months after that, I was like, man, I want to take this TED Talk and I want to expound upon it and make it into a book. And my TED Talk was all about, it's fascinating how life works, because my TED Talk was all about learning how to dance with your dragons, right? Because I thought I'd, spent 10 years learning how to really dance with those parts of you that the parts of you that beat yourself up. Yeah. And I thought, I think I figured this one out. And I thought I had. And then, and then I ended up going through a pretty heartbreaking divorce. And then 3 months after that, I was supposed to give a TED Talk on Dancing with Your Dragons when I felt like my dragons were eating my lunch at that moment. So I'm like, how do I, I don't know how to do this, but I'm just going to be really raw with it. And so I did that. And then I thought, okay, what if I could take it and make it into a book? So that's where I started. And then it was beautiful how the book evolved, how many outlines I wrote for it, how many times it changed. But I remember once in the midst of all that I had this experience where for the first time ever, I saw lions on foot. And I knew in that moment, I thought, man, there's a metaphor here that is so transformative and I think so impactful in people's lives, because what it did for me was it brought, so the way I describe the book is this idea that we're born wild and crazy and adventurous, right? So most people that are listening to this, like when you were a kid, you're just, you're jumping off of things and running through the forest or the desert or what, you're just like, causing trouble, and you end up in the ER sometimes and all that stuff. And then at some point, life tames us, right? Societal conditioning, whatever it is, it's like, get the cubicle job, play it safe, hide, just like be a cookie cutter, whatever it is. And even though we know we don't want to do that, we want to belong. And so we just most of us try to fit in. And then, so I think, and then later, we, at some point in life, we kind of have these crossroads where we decide, do I want to keep living this tame life? Or a caged life is what I talk about in there. It's like a lion in a cage versus a lion in the wild. Do we want to live this tame life or caged life? Or do you want to live a wild life? And I think a lot of once we kind of start to discover that, we have these moments where it's like, man, do I actually want to live a wild life and rediscover that part of me that was always there from childhood? Because most of us can sense that. And then we see where in our teenage or 20s, we started becoming tame or caged. And then we get to decide, do I actually want to go back into the wild? And embrace everything the wild has. And so that's what the book morphed into, was this beautiful story arc of how do you, like the subtitle says, Lessons from the Wild on Coming Alive Again. So, yeah.
When was the moment you knew you weren't alive?
So I think there was a moment, I would say, so I'm very raw and open about this. This is all in the book.
Yeah, you really are.
Because I think it's important to talk about these things.
Which I think is one of the best characteristics about you, though.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that draws me to you just as a friend.
Yeah.
Is how real you are. Because I'm constantly hungry and excited and looking for friends like that, because they're very few and far between.
Yeah, I would agree. And my hope is to draw that out of people, because I think people are like under alive because they don't have enough of that. We're all kind of hiding or masquerading or some form of that. And so I want to be an example of that, which means you put the stuff out there. And so there was a moment about 6 or 7 months after the divorce where I remember I had gone to Sedona to work with this particular therapist because I was in a very dark place, a place I'd never imagined I'd be. But like before the divorce, I was in I was one of the happiest people I knew. And so, 7 months later to find myself, so the setting was, I remember I was in Sedona, Arizona at this Airbnb. And if you haven't been to Sedona, it's beautiful. The canyons, the red rocks. I had bought a dirt bike because I just feel like I just needed to go try to, I was finding my way to the wild, which was interesting. I hadn't gotten to see the lions yet, which was interesting. So I'm in Sedona. I've got a dirt bike. I've got my 4Runner. And so there's so much that on the outside would look like full aliveness in that sense, in terms of I'm ripping around these canyons, all this stuff. I'm crashing my bike, whatever it is. But yet I feel dead inside. And so I remember one time I went out for this ride. I came back, and there's a couple things that I had happen in that moment. One was I had a helmet on, and I looked in the mirror and I saw the helmet, and I thought, I had this weird thought, which you do when you're super depressed, or I was going through suicidal ideation at the time. And I looked in the mirror and I go, why am I wearing a helmet? Like, a helmet is supposed to protect a life. And I felt like I didn't have a life worth protecting. And so I had this really dark thought, and then I remember, not too long after that, I just kind of laid down on the floor. I'm staring up at the ceiling fan. I'm in one of the most beautiful places in the world, having what some men would call a trip of a lifetime. And I feel just empty. And it was in that was the moment where, because what was the question you asked me? You said, like, when was like the...
And when did you realize you weren't alive?
Yeah, I think that was the moment where it was all kind of leading up to that, where I felt so flatlined. And then also it felt like I was powerless against the flatline. And that was what was so difficult. Was I had always figured out in life how to effort my way through, figure things out. But at this moment, I just felt like I feel like I got nothing. Like everything I've tried to do, go to Sedona, Forerunner, off-roading, dirt bike, all these things, jumping in freezing cold water there in Sedona, cold plunging, all these things. And nothing was there. It was just like flatlined. And what's beautiful about that story was interesting was that there actually was like a seed that happened, though, as I'm laying there for some reason. And it's funny because I never lion tracked before. I'd been on safari before in a vehicle, never tracked lions. But for some reason I was laying there and feeling flatline, or you think about like at the hospital, like the thing. And I don't know why I thought about lions. And the moment I thought about lions, I had like a blip in energy. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird. Like the lions are, at that point, lions are 10,000 miles from me, right? Like wild lions, right? Obviously there's lions in the zoo, but lions, like the wild lions are like 10. And I'm like, this makes no sense. And part of what I learned in that moment is, so I really think our nervous system and our physiology speaks to us, because I felt something in my system when I thought that, and I couldn't make sense of it because I'd never learned how our nervous system or our bodies work, but I did feel something. And so as I was processing that, it was just like the inception of me thinking about, like, how does God speak to us through our physiology, through our nervous systems? I mean, you look at illustrations of your nervous system online, it is mind-blowing. It runs throughout your whole system. It's, I don't know how many miles of like nerves and blah, 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 whatever it is. And I really think, like, I feel like God can speak to us through these things. So I have that moment. And even just for context too, like during that time, my faith was, I had not gone to church for quite some time, and I was really figuring out where my faith was. I hadn't like left it behind, but it was just like I stepped away to kind of like figure out what's going on with me. So anyway, so the moment that was the moment I felt like I was not alive, and then I had that blip, and I was like, interesting. Now it wasn't until I think like 13, 14, 15 months later that I actually went back to Africa to see the lions. And that's when I saw lions on foot. So it's still like a big chunk of time. And during that whole time, I was still feeling suicidal ideation. I was still feeling very dark, deep depression. For those people that are listening that know what that feels like, it's just, I had never felt that before. And so I couldn't connect with people that had gone through that, because I was like, what do you mean you can't get out of bed? What do you mean you want to die in your sleep? Like I would have things where I was like, if I was on a plane, and I'd be like, man, if the plane goes down, I wouldn't be mad, and it's like these dark things. And you almost start to, I even got to the point where I feel like you almost start to like romanticize death in a weird way. It's just like your brain just doing weird stuff to you. And so it was kind of cool to think about all of that. And in the midst of being in Sedona too, I was doing a lot of equine therapy, which is therapy with horses. And I had so many moments where I'm like, man, like what if God gave us all of these things in nature to help us heal? Because I had some very deeply healing moments with these horses that like I cannot explain, where I would have all this grief in my body. I feel like I just needed to cry because I was going through like this darkness, but I had no hope. And I would literally go to do this horse therapy. I'd walk over to a horse. I'd put my hands on the horse, like one on its heart, one on its back. And it was like the horse would pull the grief out of me and like send it into the ground, and I would just start crying. And it was like the horse was saying to me like, hey, I got you. And if that's not in my mind like an embodiment of the divine, like it was so beautiful, because and the thing was like, sometimes with other humans when we cry, we either feel judged, or we feel like their perception is like, why is that guy crying? Or you feel whatever it is. We have all these weird thoughts about emotions.
You're trying to stop crying too.
Yeah. But but when you're with the horses or you're with the lions, like there's none of that, because I don't know what it is. It's just, you feel so comfortable and so welcome. And so I would just like hold on to the horse until like the waves would like move through, and the horse would just like hold steady, because they have this like really incredible masculine presence that just like holds like a mountain would. And I was like, man, I don't know what's going on here, but I want more of this.
Oh, I love thinking about when we realized or when we become aware.
Yeah.
Because when we become aware, there's something that has to happen. It sounds like there's something that has to happen, whether we get to the end of ourselves or we realize that there is an end to ourselves.
Yeah.
And like I've always thought, like that's how you get to a dead end. You either have to arrive there on your own, or you have to realize from other people's experiences
Yep.
and your ability to look into the future that you will arrive there.
Yeah.
And we can either choose to go visit the dead end on our own, or we could learn from others that have been there and realize that we're on our way there.
Yeah.
And so as you think about that moment, I believe that there's a lot of people. It's sad because I'm just thinking of a ton of people right now.
Yeah.
I believe that there's a lot of people, both of our lives and around us, that are not alive.
Yeah.
They're not living in the fullness. They're not excited. They don't wake up with the energy to attack the day. They're just trying to get through.
Yeah.
Almost like just existing.
Yes.
Not thriving.
Yeah. The term I liked is like I've heard is sleepwalking. It's just like
Yes. Zombies.
Yeah. Yep.
It's almost like we're zombies. Sleepwalking. As somebody, you've written about this, you've thought about this. If somebody's listening right now, what would you say to them? If they were sitting right here where I am, and you have an opportunity to say something to them about them, hey, I think I'm realizing that I'm not alive.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them?
Yeah, there's a few things that come to mind for me. One is I would tell them I have all the compassion in the world for them, because I think society has really sold us a lie, and it's told a lot of lies, and it is. I don't mean that insidiously. It's just like we're all figuring this out, right? And so I would say, let's try to keep it brief, and we can expound if we want to. But it's like I think we are so afraid to go after the things that actually make us alive because they don't always make rational sense. And so the things that we really want to go after, just again, when I was laying there thinking about lions 10,000 miles away, it didn't make any rational sense. Like that's not real life. I can't just go to Africa and whatever it is. But then I listened to that enough to just go, and I was like, oh, maybe there's something here, right? In where society kind of sells you get the steady thing, get the guarantee, get the the whole American dream, right? Where people oftentimes sadly sell their life for 30 or 40 years in order to hopefully at 60 have whatever they need, and then they give up their prime for that. And so I would say I would want to help them find what are those things that have lit them up that they discounted because they were irrational, and they just kind of threw them to the side and go, well, I can't go do that. I can't go after that. So I would say that. I would say another thing I would say a lot of times is I really believe that the degree to which we can feel aliveness. So if you think about like a graph, highs and lows, I think the degree that we want to feel aliveness, I think to that magnitude, we have to also be willing to feel the deep depths of darkness sometimes. And so a lot of times that people are feeling not alive, it's because they've started to numb themselves out from feeling pain or feeling grief or feeling despair. So like if you think again like this with the x-axis, an x-y-axis, or sorry, just an x-axis of like a magnitude of a wave going up and down, the more you cut off, I think, the ability to feel grief, I think you actually you cut off your ability to feel aliveness. And I read this incredible book on grief when I was going through everything called The Wild Edge of Sorrow. And it was probably the most beautiful book I've ever read. It was a poetic book about grief because I'd read so many books about grief and trauma and all this stuff of what I'd gone through. And I was so tired of books about grief. And my therapist recommended one at the time, and I was like, I don't want to read another book on grief. And she's like, trust me, this is like not a book on grief, but it is. And you're going to love it. And so I was like, whatever, I'll try anything. So I read it. And one of the things that he talked about in there was he said to this, there was like an African proverb or story about somebody said to this woman in Africa, man, you have so much joy in your face. Like you just have so much joy. And they said, how do you have so much joy? And she goes, oh, that's easy. I cry a lot. And so I really do believe, and I've experienced this in my life and many of my clients and many friends, family, whatever, the more that you're willing to actually feel deep, like the downs, the deep grief and sadness, I think it opens up your ability to feel aliveness. And I would say at this point of life, I do feel incredibly alive, which feels so weird from 5-6 years ago, where I, felt almost unalive or dead or whatever you want to call it. And I love keeping the growing of that. But a lot of the journey for me is when I feel sadness, intentionally being with it. And I remember there was a time when with one of my therapists where, I felt like it was probably 18, 24 months after the divorce, and I'm like still feeling sad. I feel like I should be done being sad, all these things. And I come to the call and I'm like, I just said, gosh, I'm so tired of showing up and being sad. And she had one of the most beautiful responses. She said, is the sadness here now? And I was like, yeah, it's here. And she goes, well, why don't we just go meet it? And I was like, what do you mean? Go meet? Like, it's so stupid, go meet my sadness, And so we went and met it, and it was this beautiful session. And then it was so interesting because now I go to these like group breathwork sessions, which I just love. And for whatever reason in this season of life for me, when I go to breathwork right now, it almost always is me like going and hanging out with my sadness. But there's been such a shift from like, I used to fear my sadness, right? For those people that are in Enneagram, I'm Enneagram 7, which is like, push away sadness, push away pain, let's go find fun, right? All the time. And so the idea of going and meeting and hanging out with your sadness intentionally is so stupid. But I actually, the reason I go to a lot of these group breathwork sessions is because I feel like it's where I go to spend time with my sadness, because now sadness has actually become my friend and I don't fear it anymore. I actually kind of like it. I'm like, oh, hey there, old friend. Like, what's up? How's it going? And I think because like, no matter where you are in the world, there's stuff going on, right? And so there is sadness, there is grief. And I think the more that we actually embrace that and befriend it and let it befriend us and spend time with it and not be afraid of it, the more that we feel that, the more that we can feel aliveness. And so I find that, to your question of like, what I would say to somebody who's, not feeling alive is there's probably going to be some need to feel grief on the pathway to aliveness. And then I think the more that we feel that, the more that we feel the fullness of the emotions we're experiencing, I think emotions are a gift from God. The more we feel the full range of them, which means the lowest of lows and highest of highs, the more that I feel like we actually can start to, I would put it this way, like I feel like it's almost a pathway to hearing the voice of God and hearing the voice of the aliveness that can come through us. Like that moment I had on the floor of Sedona where I felt about the lions, I felt like God was saying something to me. And then 13 months later, when I saw lions on foot, had a wild lion charge me. And in that moment, I felt the highest of highs. But I was still in a season where I was still feeling a lot of the lowest of lows. So that, again, that tension or that cross section is so beautiful to me. And I think that there's, so I think so much of life is learning how to fully feel so that we can understand the language that I would say that God is like pre-coded into our system, and we can really connect and speak to God in that weird way, almost the way that like elephants speak through the ground. It's freaking crazy. Elephants like talk to each other through the ground. They make these rumbles, they go through the ground, they can speak through their feet, go into the ground, and then they can speak to each other like, I think it's like, if I remember right, don't quote me on this, but like miles away, right? So like, there's something going on that we can't see, right? There's just dolphins, all this stuff. And so like, what if there's these crazy transmissions that can come through our nervous system, can come through our body that we've neglected, that are there? And so what I tell people is like, think about those moments where you just were like almost transcendentally lit up, even if it's not rational, makes no sense. Could have been at a concert, could have been at a sporting event, could have been a first date, could have been an amazing drink of coffee. Like just those moments where you're like, ooh, like there's a sense of aliveness, at least a blip of aliveness there. And then the more you can get to connect to that, I find the more you can actually start to listen to that and connect to the whole system that you've got and start to learn what draws you to aliveness. But so often we just are taught to discount those things that make us alive. And that's what I think is one of the greatest tragedies. And if I can reconnect people to that, that would be worth it.
There's a lot of things that are running through my mind right now. And one of those is, as I think about the person that needed to hear that, what I really come face to face with is I just find myself naturally asking myself, well, where am I conforming?
Yeah.
And where am I getting comfortable? Because if you view it maybe even as a spectrum, and on positivity, on the extreme positivity side is all these positive emotions and feelings and joy and celebration. And then the more we conform, the more in the middle we get, the more we start to look like everyone else. Mm-hmm. And on the negative end, it's that sadness, it's that more negative side of tears and crying. And it's like, well, I want to avoid this as well, so I'm going to conform, and I'm just going to be comfortable right here in the middle. And I think a lot of times we pursue comfort because then we don't have to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or I look like other people. I can be in society. I can go through the motions. I can get through. Or whatever. But living is really on the ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Both, like you're saying, both into the negative, because if I have capacity to cry, well, I have capacity to cheer.
Yes.
And then we're starting to understand what we have capacity for. And I think that is one of the most important things for us to understand, is that you have a capacity that you can't hardly imagine.
Yes. Big time.
Capacity. Oh, I can go help. I can go experience. And guess what? If I start getting passionate about something, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be something sad. There's going to be an issue that comes up that's going to make me cry, because now I have found something worth crying for.
Yes.
And I love the journey that you've been on, and how you're really trying to use the things that you've been through to help others. As you think about, it's funny to see people, because I've been with you when this has happened. It's funny to see people talk to you, and then you talk about and bring up lion tracking. Because it always blows everyone's mind. Everyone's like, wait, do you hunt them? Wait,
Yeah.
do you, what does that mean? Wait, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Why do you think the first callback or the first response is always in this kind of crazy scenario? Like, why? People assume a lot.
Yeah.
And they judge really fast, always.
Yeah.
And it is just so interesting to me, because everyone goes, that's dumb.
Yeah.
Or not they don't
crazy,
necessarily, yes, dumb, crazy, I would never.
Yes.
And in some ways that is the point. You're right, you would never, and that's why you're going to stay comfortable.
Yeah.
That's why you're going to stay complacent. That's why you're going to stay in the middle.
Yeah.
That's why you're not.
Yeah.
I don't know, like it kind of bothers me a little bit. Because when I hear it, I'm like, you don't even understand.
Yeah.
The reason you're saying you're responding like this is the reason that you're not actually alive.
Yeah.
Think of how you're responding. You immediately go, anyways, I'm just like thinking about how people respond to you. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think.
What else? What do you?
Well, I think, if we come back to like one of the first things we talked about was like, it's this realm of the world people don't know they don't know, right? And so people have this assumption or perception for whatever reason that, and I did too before I went on foot with lions, where the assumption is if I'm on foot and I see lions in the wild and there's nothing to protect, there's no fence between us, like a zoo, oh, that lion's just going to attack and eat me, right? And the reality is just not the case. And so I think this is what's interesting is someone curious about what they don't know? Because obviously I've went, and I'll oftentimes tell people I've been out on foot for a total of about 8 weeks. And I'm still here, so it's obviously not that dangerous yet. Right. And again, something can happen and it is the wild. And I'd let people know that there is always that chance, but I also tell them, what's interesting is every time you go get in your car, if you drive an average of, 12,000, an average amount of miles a year in a car, and I tell people, what do you think your chances are of dying in a car accident? And they usually think it's like 1 in 100,000 or something crazy like that, right? And I tell them, first of all, I let them guess. And then I say, the reality is it's 1 in 6,000. 1 in 6,000. And most people you never think twice most people. I say most people, you get in your car every day and you just drive around and you don't think about the fact you might die. But when you get out on foot with lions, of course, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to die, right? And again, so it's perceptually very dangerous. In reality, it's not that dangerous. And what they say about the wild is 99.999% of the time, everything's totally fine. And there's that 0.001% chance that something goes sideways. And sometimes when something goes sideways, it goes sideways very fast. And sometimes the impact can be drastic. So I'm not dumb to that. I'm not like,
you're not discounting.
No, I'm not discounting it at all. And so, but like you said, why is people's response that, oh, I would never? It's really interesting because, but what they're basing that story on, that I would never, is they're basing it on their perception of something that they really know nothing about. And that's what's so interesting to me, that I think is so important, is that so often we're basing our perception on something. So for example, of doing something, taking a risk, right? I've told you this story where I got up and I was writing a new keynote. I wanted to do a dry run of it with people in my company. And I was fairly terrified because something near and dear to my heart. It was a new thing I'd written. Wasn't sure I was going to come out. And I had a perception that, oh my gosh, this is going to be awful, And so then we almost live into that story of it or whatever it is. So then I get up, I do the dry run of the keynote. It actually does go fairly terribly. But it also wasn't that bad, right? I didn't die. I didn't like everything's fine. Actually I learned a ton, and actually for the audience is actually really impactful, even though I hacked my way through it and got quite emotional at some certain points that I revealed stuff to the company that like this story about, this Sedona, and I hadn't shared that with a lot of close friends before. And so I shared it. It evoked a lot of emotion, and it wasn't like a tear. It was like I lost control of my emotions on stage where I'm trying to do this dry run in front of people that I care about. So it's like this whole thing where it's just like sort of a disaster, but it was actually really impactful, and I didn't die. So we have this perception that, oh my gosh, if I go after what I really love, if I step into this conflict, if I XYZ, we have this perception that it's just going to go horribly. And so then we stay back. So again, it's a realm of the world that we think we know, but we actually don't know what we don't know about that thing. You don't know what's going to happen in a conflict that you step into it. That's why we don't step into it, because it's uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen when you're out on foot with lions, but we project into the unknown something tragic is going to happen. And it's actually the exact opposite. Is usually it's the most beautiful thing to happen when you're out on foot with lions, because you get to experience this energy of the wild you cannot get anywhere else, in my opinion. So that's why I think people are constrained, because their mindset is constantly telling them fear, 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 rather than aliveness, 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 aliveness. And then oftentimes those two things go hand in hand. And so I think that's our conditioning societally is run away from the fear rather than run towards it. And I think that shift in somebody's life is really everything, is when you're willing to start stepping into the things that you're afraid of, that you want to run from. That's where the aliveness and the light is. And so I think that's why people generally are like, oh, I would never. They don't.
They're not curious.
Yeah, they're not curious, and they don't even realize it's that they're not curious.
Yeah.
Because their assumption happens so fast. Right. And if they could just pause, this is what Viktor Frankl talks about in Man's Search for Meaning, is one of the last of human freedoms is to choose your response. And so I have a lot of compassion for people, because I understand that the wiring is just assumption, fear, No, I'd never do that, right? Rather than just like 1% of curiosity. Hey, what's it like to be out there with the lions? Is it really as dangerous as my brain is telling me right now? And then like let the conversation unfold from that point. And then it gets to be really fun. And then it's like, I tell people, you think you will run, which is the only thing you can't do. And I go, I can almost guarantee you're not going to run. And if you do want to run, I tell people when I'm taking guests out, I say, hey, any moment you start to feel like you need to, you like want to run, grab my hand. I got you. Or grab one of the hands of the guides. That's what they're there for, because they don't have the fear that we do, because they've been doing this and they've learned how to do this. And it hit me one time when I was out there. I said, it's like, for everything that I'm afraid of or you're afraid of, there's somebody on the planet who's not afraid of that thing, which is kind of wild. Anything from public speaking to snakes to lions to cold plunges, whatever it is. There's somebody on the planet that's not afraid of what you're afraid of. Writing a book. And if you could just get around those people and go, hey, I see that you're not afraid of the thing that I'm afraid of. How is that? Like, how's that work? And that's how I've learned to not be afraid of the lions. And even like last year I was at camp, there's one of the guys at the camp, the staff members, who like is wildly into snakes, and snakes terrify me. But after talking with him for a while, I'm like, man, I should take a snake handling course. Like, cause like there's people on the planet that aren't afraid of handling venomous snakes. But I assume like, oh, I'll always be afraid because it's just a scary thing. And what we don't realize is there's actually a potential that in the future I could not be afraid of snakes, which still doesn't quite compute for me. But I probably will at some point take some snake handling courses, and you can progress from like 101 to 201 to 301 to where like 401, 501, like you're handling venomous snakes. I'm like, that seems so far outside of my possibility, but I'm like, I'll probably do it just as like, because I want to test my limits on that, because again, there's plenty of people on the planet that are not afraid of snakes at all. And I was like, yeah, it's a fascinating thing to me. So get around people that aren't afraid of what you're afraid of. Whatever you're afraid of, just find people on the planet that aren't afraid of it and ask them, how are you not afraid of this thing? Teach me.
What have you learned about the person that quickly assumes and dismisses versus the person that's 1% curious? Because those two people seem very similar.
Yeah.
Yet yet it feels like as you keep describing the gap, there's a huge gap there.
Yeah, the thing I would say, and it may not be the thing people think I would say, I think the main difference there is bitterness. Because I find when people aren't curious, it's because something in their system has taught them that the last time I was curious, I got hurt. Last time I was open at all, I got hurt. And so I have to, and usually it was because of somebody else. I experienced pain because of this person, mom, dad, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever. And so I started to learn to close myself down. And so the person that's 1% curious is the person who, even though they've been hurt, they still like are willing to open. Even though they realize the moment you open, you could experience pain. The moment you choose to love somebody, right? C.S. Lewis has a brilliant quote on this, around like the only way to avoid heartbreak is just to hide your heart away as far as you can and never love. So I think the difference between the person who's 1% curious and the person who's not is bitterness that they haven't been willing to look at. And again, I have so much compassion, because bitterness, I don't go, oh man, that's a bitter person. No, I go, if somebody has bitterness, all I know is that they've went through some deep pain and they haven't had somebody to help them walk through that. And so I have so much compassion and love for that person. I want to give them a big hug. I'm not like, oh my God, you're so bitter, you're not curious. Like that, I used to do that. Right? Growing up, I think, and even when I first got into coaching, I think I would judge people. Well, you're obviously not very curious, are you? Right? And that's even some of the training I got was like a bit like harsh like that. And I didn't like that. I knew I didn't like it. And so now when I experience somebody who's not curious, man, my heart grows for them and expands and wants to envelop them in love, because I know the only pathway for them to go from not curious to 1% curious is more love. Every time. And Scriptures talked about this, forever. It's like the greatest of these is love. Perfect love casts out all fear. And I think we try to use all like kind of other mechanisms. They don't work. Love's the only way.
Bitterness, I think I've heard it is like drinking a poison and hoping that it hurts
somebody else
the other-
dies.
hurts
Yeah, somebody else
somebody
dies. Yeah.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, that speaks really clearly to being alive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great, you're right. I don't think people realize that. I would not have answered that question like that.
Yeah.
But I think that is a great realization,
Yeah.
is that we've all, as humans, being human comes with being hurt.
Yeah.
And if we don't deal with it, if we don't come face to face with our hurt and work through it, you're right. I think a lot of times it's because we may be bitter,
Yeah.
expecting the other person that hurt us or to suffer
Yeah.
based off of the poison that we're drinking.
Yeah.
What do you think the moment was where have you dealt with bitterness?
Mm-hmm. Oh, immense.
And how do you care to describe maybe a little bit, and then talk about like, hey, what are some really healthy things that I did to start
Yeah.
coming face to face with it? Because no one wants to come face to face with their bitterness.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so there's a contextual thing for me I think that's important to start with, and that is, it comes from one of my favorite quotes from a guy named Peter Crone. And he said, life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal to you where you're not yet free. So life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal to you where you're not free. So the foundation of that concept is, and I would look at it from a theological perspective, you say like, what if everything that you've been through and will go through literally is God's gift to you for your freedom? Like, what if? And so when we're going through bitterness, what we're not looking at is that what if that thing or that heartbreak or whatever it is, what if that thing could actually be a portal to our freedom? We're not looking at it that way. We're looking at it as that person hurt me and they need to suffer, or they should have never done that. Well, they did do that, and whatever happened. And so again, and I don't want to bypass the pain. There's still pain involved, but the pain can often be that portal to freedom that I think that God wants for us. And I think one of the things God wants for us more than anything is freedom. Again, scripturally, it's for freedom that Christ set us free. So there's things there that all tie in. So you said the question was around like if somebody's bitter.
Well, so like if someone.
Oh, with me.
Yeah. Like I would love for you to talk about maybe even your bitterness and how you began to step away from it.
Yes. Yeah.
And begin to come face to face with it.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the hardest parts, is coming face to face.
Yes.
With a lion, much less.
Yeah. So I have there's a story. So when I was in Sedona, one of the methodologies I was doing for therapy that I'd never done before in my life was this breathwork therapy. I was working one-on-one with this woman, just amazing. And I would go to her place where she had horses too, and I would do breath work. And I remember it was one of the most beautiful breath work sessions I had ever had. And what's funny is there had been a few sessions where I'd set an intention. So it'd be like an hour and a half session total. I'd go in, you'd kind of talk for a while, set an intention for the breath work, go into breath work for like 45 minutes, which I find fascinating, man. I'm telling you, just as a side note on this, I'd never heard of breath work before this. After doing it, I was like, I had one session where I came out of it and I was like, I'd remembered this talk I'd heard one time that talked about how in the Old Testament, the word for God that they came up with was Yahweh, which was actually breath. Yahweh. It was like the best way they could like put into like terms what the breath sounded like. And I remember I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Back, when I heard it when I was like in my teens, right? So then I had this breathwork session and I come out of it and I was like, wow, like God is breath, And so when I do breath work, and a lot of breath work breath work can span the gamut of like,
yes, it totally can.
Right out there, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's like going in sort of, it's a way of like a form of prayer even. It's like a going and being with God because God is breath. And like when you do this, like I've gone on crazy trips like if you call it, how you want to call it. I've gone like in outer space in breath work, and I feel like I'm hanging out with God. It's like so cool. I'm telling you. So anyway, so there's this one. So it's set intention. You go into breath work for like 45 minutes, and it's almost like you really, for me, it's like I'm just like giving stuff over to God and letting God like be with me in it, and I don't know what's going to happen. And so I go into this breathwork session, and I'd gone into a number of them with the intention of like forgiving my ex, right, for whatever, for the pain, for the blah blah blah, whatever it is, right. And I was like, 'cause I could feel it, so I want to come at it from like an ownership responsible, like I want to take responsibility for my pain. I'm not blaming her, but it's like I realize I have pain, and I realize there's forgiveness that I need to work through, and bitterness, right? So I kept going into these sessions, and I would go somewhere else in the session because I have an intention, but I would always stay open-handed about like where I needed to go. So then finally one, I was like, okay, I really want to work on this bitterness stuff. And I could feel it just jammed up in me. And I was like, I wanted to punch walls or, whatever, you know what I mean? Kind of thing, just angry. And I went into this session, and all I remember is I came out of it, and I had this realization that I don't think forgiveness is an intellectual exercise mostly. And I think growing up as a kid, so much of my upbringing in the Christian church, I felt like it was a very neck up faith, which, I just didn't, that was what it was seemed like it was taught. It was so intellectual, so heady, so like, and so when I went into this breath session and came out of it, I was like, man, because I'd been trying intellectually to forgive her, right, and to let go of it. And I think forgiveness is a full body experience, like leave no cell unturned. And I think it's even more beautiful when it's that. So I went into the breath work, and I felt like I did have a massive jump in my forgiveness and letting go of bitterness through that. But it wasn't intellectual. It was a full nervous system experience where I was just frankly willing to finally surrender and just go, I can't force this forgiveness, right? I think we can sort of fake like we do. Like I can say I forgive somebody. That's intellectual. And I tried that so many times. I mean, I was like growing up, like, I was like this seriously zealous person for the faith, and I would try to intellectually do stuff. And I feel like it just really, matter of fact, it didn't work, but I saw everybody else thinking, oh, this is how it's supposed to work. But I think deep down inside me, I'm like, the intellectual part just doesn't work. I don't know. I feel like it's supposed to be a full body experience, right? Like when we went up with the Lions. And so that's one way that I really dealt with it, was like, find different modalities of, I think it's mostly more about surrender than anything. It's not about like willing yourself to forgive. I find it's allowing yourself to surrender, and to surrender to the reality that what if that thing that happened was actually for your freedom? And what if I even go further, like, what if maybe God and I brought that into my life to challenge me if I really want freedom, right? Kind of like the way a metaphor I like to use is the way a person, if I want to be in better shape, or, if I want my muscles to grow, I'm going to bring weights into my life. And those weights are going to make my life harder, but it's because I want the freedom of my body and my movement. And so I think in some ways as well, I think, what if I bring these heartbreaks into my life because I want weights to lift sometimes, right? And this is the whole idea of like life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal to you where you're not free. You don't know how much you can lift or not if you never step into a weight room. You'd be like, I can bench 500 pounds. Well, prove it, You don't actually know, but then you go to the gym and then you put on weights and you can figure out exactly how much you can actually bench press. And then if you keep doing that, keep bringing those weights in your life, you can grow in your body's capacity. I think the same happens emotionally, psychologically. So sometimes it comes into our life via heartbreak that we didn't necessarily we didn't realize we brought into our life, but what if subconsciously we did? And then sometimes it's we bring in risks, like when we did that dry run of that keynote, like I intentionally went and sought that out. And so I think our life is a combination of those two types of things. And my invitation to people, if you really want aliveness, is seek those things out. Go outside of your comfort zone, do things that scare you consistently, and then just realize you aren't going to die and keep going after them. And I think that for me is the pathway to getting beyond the bitterness and figuring out how to forgive as a full body experience. And then the last thing I would say is I've never found forcing myself to forgive to work. again, I know it's like, the scriptures say like forgive, right? And it's like, so I'm not saying like don't forgive. I'm just saying sometimes like forcing it doesn't always work. Sometimes it's understanding, okay, I'm a human, that person's a human. We're all on this journey. We're figuring life out. And what if I could surrender? And what if I could just choose love and like watch the forgiveness happen? Because it's almost like it happens to you rather than you like intellectually force it. That's been my experience with it.
You know, in a lot of ways, what you just said is, it's really beautiful. And you can either learn something by choosing, or you can learn something by it choosing you.
Yes, big time.
You will learn.
Yep, you'll learn.
You will learn.
It'll find you.
And
Well, hopefully.
well, you may not learn as in like you may not understand.
Well, no. Hopefully, what I'm saying is hopefully either you choose it or it chooses you. Because if you don't choose it and it never chooses you, you'll probably have a pretty boring life.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So I'm saying hopefully heartbreak finds you. Hopefully like risk.
Or something, or difficult.
Something, difficulty, taking a risk and failing.
Yes.
Hopefully that finds you, because those are the moments we grow.
Well, see, like I think a lot of times, I think it will always find us.
Yeah.
But you can choose to not go through it.
Yes. Yeah, you can choose to numb out somehow. Big time.
Totally. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what's happening is like, I think no matter what in life, it's going to either choose us or we choose it. And in the middle of that, you have an opportunity to go through it.
Yes.
Or you have an opportunity to hide.
Yes. Yeah, to hide, to numb, to distract somehow. Big time.
Avoid.
And again, yes, avoid. Big time.
Gosh.
Yep.
I think that's something, if I could just, I love what you said earlier about hugging someone.
Yeah.
Like, the beauty of not being alone is so powerful, because if you're not alone and you really feel like someone is in your corner and with you, oh my gosh, you're invincible in a lot of ways. Because then there's no fear, or the fear is not going to stop us. You still may be afraid, but knowing that there's somebody with you allows you to like walk through, with them.
Yeah.
No matter the darkness that you walk through, what if somebody was with you? You'd be willing to walk through it potentially.
Yeah.
The shadow and the dark, or the no's, or the negative. And man, I think that there has to be, with all of your iterations of this book and all the things that you've been through, if you were to say, this is my desire for those that are willing, for those that would entertain, for those that would consider, for those that would be willing to even have a conversation with me because you would like to be curious, you're just not curious yet, okay? Because I believe I've seen you do this, where they're not curious, and then you walk with them to a point of 1% curiosity,
Yeah.
which is also really noble,
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
of you. And so, what would you say is your desire for those that would entertain even just a moment of listening?
Of curiosity.
Yes.
What's my desire for them?
Yeah, what do you want for them? What's your hope for them?
Well, I think my hope for them is that they taste the curiosity, and it's so life-giving that they have this almost transcendental moment where they're like, man, almost everything that I want is on the other side of deep curiosity. Like, there's just so much to know and to learn about people, And I'm tempted to make a reference to the movie Inception.
Come on, do it.
But I realize that people haven't seen it. You've seen it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's old enough.
So we'll talk about it with you, and if people haven't seen it, go watch it. But there's such a beautiful metaphor in there. I watched it recently again because I was like, I wanted to watch it and like watch it thematically. Like, what's the theme of this movie? Because I think when I first watched it, it was just like, oh man, this is a great kind of action sci-fi, whatever, and you get caught up in stuff, and you like forget like, oh, there's actually like a really deep theme or multiple themes, and one of them is, and this is around the idea of curiosity, is so when they're in the dream state, whoever the dreamer is that they're in the dream state for, everything in there is the projections of that person, but it's not the real person that's there, right? So like a lot of it's with Leonardo DiCaprio's character and his wife that had passed away, but when you're in those dream states, it messes with your own mind as you're watching the movie because you think, oh, that's actually his wife, when it's not his wife. It's his projection of his wife. And there's a beautiful conversation towards the end of the movie, which almost brings me to tears every time, where they're talking across a table like this. And she keeps saying, I want you to come be here with me, right? I think the whole movie is about grief. I should say the whole. I think one of the deep themes is grief of him figuring out how to let go of her. Because they have this moment. Have you guys seen it? Okay.
So good.
So good, right? So they're having it, and he's like, he basically is saying to her, this is not actually you. This is my projection of who you are. So even if I come down here and be with you, it's not actually you. And this is why it's here up, because I wonder how often in life am I not actually seeing you? I'm seeing my projection of you. So we're having a conversation, and I'm not being present enough to actually be with you. And so when somebody with the curiosity thing, what I hope for people is they realize that our tendency as humans is to be in projection, even not in the dream state, even in reality. And so I wonder, how often do I do that where I'm not actually here with you, I'm here with a projection I have of you. And then if I can drop that and have curiosity, then I can be here. And I can be so connected to you and what's coming alive for you or what's going on with you. And that's what that movie taught me. I thought that scene was so beautiful. And I want to get up and run around because I'm like, man, if you really understood curiosity, if you really got it, you would be so grateful and have so much gratitude for the fact that that whatever you do have, you have. And that's what curiosity gives you. And even 1% of it it's like that Leonard Cohen quote where he says, there's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. So for me, a lot of times it's like, if I can get that 1%, I know we're going to go to 100%. Because once somebody gets a taste of that, it is so life-giving. And then the ability to actually be with somebody rather than my projection of them is just almost, it's euphoric. Because I'm here with another human, wow, this Trevor guy. Man, let me get to know him rather than what I think I know of him or whatever I assume about him. Yeah.
There's this game I like to play. And it comes from this idea that you're talking about. And here's the concept. If I think somebody is not interesting or boring, it's my fault,
yes,
not theirs.
Exactly. That's a great game to play.
And so if I really want to experience fullness and add to their life, my goal is to figure out what makes them them.
Yeah.
What lights them up. What is their passion? What makes them tick? What opens their eyes? What gets them to lean in? And that is one of the most exhilarating games to play.
It's so fun because it's in there.
You know it's in there. You know they're of infinite value. You know they matter. What if it's up to us to figure out where that comes from?
Yes.
And then you can just totally add into their life.
And curiosity is only a pathway to that, right?
Yes, and that is, I'm not curious enough.
Yep.
I'm boring.
Yes.
If I'm bored, guess who's boring?
Yep.
It's me, not them.
Yeah. Well, that the word bored, what's the etymology of that is?
I don't think I do.
It's to bore a hole.
No, yeah.
So if I'm bored, it's that I feel like there's a hole, I'm empty.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of fascinating, right?
Yeah.
But I love that anyway. So yeah, but I love the idea of responsibility of man, if I'm not interested, if I find somebody not interesting, it's that I'm not interesting enough and curious enough to find out what makes them tick.
Yeah, and I'm looking to get from them instead of give to them.
Yes.
And if I can give to, guess what? I'll always get given to.
Yeah.
Now, it may not be from them.
Right.
And that's okay.
But it's a trust in the understanding of how the world works.
But then I just don't need to be on the journey with them through life.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'm looking for the people that are wanting to go with me and want to return and reciprocate that curiosity.
Yeah.
So that we can go somewhere and be fully alive together.
Yeah.
I think people are missing out. And I see you leaning into that purpose. And I think that's probably why we know each other.
I think so too.
Is to keep encouraging each other to keep going in that direction.
Yeah.
Because if there's a community that could be built around us and in our lives, I mean, what a community to be a part of.
Yeah.
Now that's exhilarating.
Yeah.
That's exhilarating.
Because then the whole world's open to you.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, talk about the future that is open to somebody. I think why? Let's end with this. Why am I the lion?
Why are you the lion? Well, let me tell the story about the title of the book.
Please.
Right. So
I would like that was
where we're going.
That was the point.
So I had a whole document of I had ideas for titles everywhere, right, over the last 5 years. And I'm sure it was well over 100 ideas for the title. Talked with many people about coming up with this. And so one time I was having a call with this similar, one of the therapists I mentioned, and all I remember was I'd come off a different call where I was talking with one of my coworkers about lions. And it was still in the midst of like the season where I was in suicidal ideation, right? So a very dark place still. But I'd come off this call talking about lions. And so I call him on this call with my therapist, and I'm like, and I just am dumbfounded. I'm like, man, I'm in such a dark place. But when I talk about lions, something lights up in me, and I can't figure out what's going on there. And so I was telling my therapist, like, I just don't understand this. Like, what's going on? And she said, I think I know what's happening. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, because she's like, I don't think this is just about you tracking lions. I think it's that you're tracking a future version of yourself that you're not sure if it exists. And I just started sobbing because it was like so true. Because at that moment of life, when you're in suicidal ideation, the greatest kind of lie that suicidal ideation tells you is that nothing's ever going to change. It's going to be like this the rest of your life. And that's why you start having suicidal thoughts, because you're like, man, if this is going to be like this forever, I'm not doing this. And so she's like, I think you're tracking a lion, that lion's you. You're tracking a lion. You're tracking a version of yourself that you hope exists in the future, but you're not sure if it's there. And that's what it lights you up, is because there is a sense. There's like this 1% belief in you that future's out there, and you'll go to whatever lengths you need to find him. And so then I was telling that story, because I still didn't have the title, but I was telling that story to my publisher, and she just literally goes, "The lion is you." And as soon as she said it, I was like, that's the title. And my hope is that it invites people into metaphorically tracking lions, and the lion that they're tracking is themselves. And I want people to track the life that they've always longed to have, that they know is out there. And I want them to see that in the past, present, and future, that life has always been laying tracks for them. And I even have this I love, like, lions are like mythological creatures for me, or mystical creatures. And I like to think, man, it's like, what if God created lions the way he did so that they would lay tracks? And what if I imagine like the lions laying tracks, wanting us to track them. And then I wonder if the future and I just, like, again, I'm going off the wall here, but like, imagine that the future version of you has been laying tracks for you to follow. And because he or she wants you to follow to freedom. And they're laying those tracks for you, and it's going to go through all kinds of things. I never imagined my tracks would have went through divorce. The last thing I thought my tracks would go through. But when I look back, I see the beauty of the story arc of it, that's where my tracks needed to go through in order for me to have the freedom that I have today. And I'm so grateful for it. And I would not want to go through it again, I don't think. But I'm grateful that I went through it. And so the lion in you is just an invitation to track the greatest version of yourself that's possible through the pathway of curiosity. and trusting that everything that's happened in your life has actually been for you, and it's invited you into a deeper level of freedom that you never imagined. And if you can shift your perspective on it, that's when everything begins to open up.
The line is you. And as you think about you and where you're headed and where you're tracking, I'd be curious, and maybe this is maybe how we can end. I'd be curious to hear about what you think is next for you. And as you think about what's next for you, I'd love for you to close with encouraging the people that are listening to start tracking the future version of themselves that they really want.
Yeah. What I think is next for me is, I mean, I have this sense, and it feels outlandish to say, but I feel like the book's going to really catch on. It's been out for a few weeks at this point, and I think it's really going to, create some waves, and I'm really excited for that. I'm hesitant to say that as a first-time author, because first-time author books never go, almost never go anywhere unless you're just massively lucky. And so my what I think was next for me is, my hope is that people read the book, and every time they read the book, a person reads the book, they think of 3 people, 5 people that they like, man, I know somebody has got to read this book, because I want it to touch people in a way that I want it to have them experience something they haven't experienced before, and that's a start to kind of like pull them forward. So I think what's next for me is the book impacting lives. And what's next for me is speaking on stages where I can bring this message to a lot of people, and then that results in them wanting to read the book. And then my hope is, as they read the book, they want to find themselves, right? The whole point of the book is to invite people into a much deeper version of who they can be. Yeah. I want to invite people into depth, because I want people to really get connected with themselves. And because I think when somebody's really connected to themselves in a deep sense of love, then that love just wants to almost explode out of them. Yeah. And they want to hug everybody, and they want to be curious about everybody. Yeah. And their ego starts to fall away. And it's not about comparison and whatever it is. It's just, I just want to go hug everybody, and I just want to go change the world somehow and help somebody that's in suffering or whatever it is. So my encouragement to people is, read the book and see yourself in the story, and let this future version of you that's so wild and free and adventurous pull you into the next moment, right? Don't get too lost way off in the future, but let the moment, the version of you that's a step ahead, that's fearless, right? All the characteristics we want to have, let that version of you pull you, just invite you into the future, and really trust the unfolding of things. Because one of the biggest tenets of lion tracking is really this idea of one track at a time. Because there's a tendency, you see a first track, which is like when you find the first track in the morning, you're going to go out and track, and you find one good track in the ground, and then you want to find a second and third. And the tendency is like, let's go straight to the lions. And it's not usually like that. It's like here, and it weaves here, and the lions go get some water. They go all over the place, and then they lay down. You can see where they lay down. And the tendency is to want to get ahead of yourself. And for me, one of the biggest things I learned is take a step, find a track, and then see what opens. Find a track. Because a lot of times you'll be going in a certain direction, and you'll end up, you think, I'm going to go do the X, right? I set my vision, my goal is X. And on the pathway to X, something completely, for whatever reason, pulls you in a different direction, and you go towards Y, but then Y becomes incredible, but you would have never gotten to Y if you hadn't gone towards X. So the idea is trust the uncertainty of things. I remember I was talking to my therapist one time, and I was like, I just want to know if I'm going to get married and have kids. It's my greatest desire, right? And I was like, I just want to know if that's going to happen. And she goes, is that why you go track lions? And it hit me. She's like, you can go down the street to the zoo for $20 and see a lion for sure. You can get a guarantee. But she's like, you fly 10,000 miles for no guarantee. She's like, you love uncertainty. And I was like, wow, I guess I don't want to know. I don't want to know. And so my encouragement to people is, let go of this need to have this certainty about the future. Let yourself follow a track at a time. Let that version of you that's in the future pulling you forward, like the lion, let that energy pull you forward. Keep taking lots of risks. take risks in community. Get around people that make you more brave, like the trackers do for me. Get around those types of people that aren't afraid of what you're afraid of. Spend time with them. Tell them, hey, I'm afraid of the thing you're afraid of. Take me with you. That's my biggest encouragement to people. And if you just do that one step at a time, you'll wake up 5 or 10 years later and you will be unrecognizable to yourself in the best way possible. And then when you get a taste of that, your curiosity explodes. Everything is, and you just want to bring people with you. You're like, come on, let's everybody go take a bunch of risks and let's just hold each other. Just take risks. Go hold each other, and just like go walk together. And then when somebody takes a risk and fails, we're all like celebrating. Because that's what it's like to become fully alive, is to take a risk and fail and trust that you can make it through a next failure. Yeah. And because that's, that's the best way to live, in my opinion. So that'd be my encouragement for people.
Dude, okay, we could talk forever. I mean, my gosh, we have actually. And so a few things for me, just for you personally, is I really believe in you and what you're doing. I really do love you. Like, you're a really good friend. And it's cool to have a friend this fast.
Yeah.
But I think it's because of how consistent we've been in each other's lives.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed all of my time with you. And I really believe in what you're doing. And I think what I really think is if I just want more and more people to sit down with you and us keep doing this.
I'd love to, yeah.
Where it's like, oh man, I was sitting with a friend of mine yesterday, and he was not feeling alive.
Yeah.
And I hated sitting down with him and him being in that position. And I was trying my best not to tell him what to do. And I kept reiterating to him, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. But gosh, I just want you to have this aliveness and this purpose and this passion that you're looking for. If you would let me walk with you, I think we can find it.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I know we can find it. And so I'm just remembering just that yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's just such an honor to have somebody that you care about that's a friend or even acquaintance that opens up and says, hey, I just need some help.
Yeah, big time.
I'm hurting. I needed someone to talk to. And I'm even just sensing, even in just this room that we're in, this warehouse that's a studio, that's also where we build community, that this could be an opportunity here where we just keep fostering the right environment, the right friendships, the right curiosity that encourages people to keep finding what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So it's an honor to honestly just do this with you, man.
I love this.
Love you.
Same.
Love this. And I could not be more excited.
All right.
Golly, for you in this book.
Yeah, man.
Again, David Gerber, author David Gerber. The title of the book is The Lion Is You. And would you just come alive? So there's people that are not alive right now. I hope they are. That's an ambulance passing. So that was, yeah. Anyways, and we just want them to step into this. So where can they purchase this?
Yeah,
How do they connect with you?
Yeah, so it's available online for almost every major retailer. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble,
all the things.
Bookshop, yeah, all the things. Book Club, whatever it is, that is another option. Yeah, you can
find
it.
Fastest on Amazon, always.
Always on Amazon. Yeah, yep.
And then can they listen to it yet? Is there an audio?
Not
version
yet. Hopefully in the fall I'll be getting that out.
Okay.
And the Kindle version should be coming very soon.
Okay.
So.
And then if people are like, hey, I would like to connect with you, talk more about coaching.
Yep.
Hear more about that. How do they do that?
So I'd say so my website's davidagerber.com. David A. Gerber. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm most active on Instagram.
Yep.
So at David Gerber. And so that's probably shoot me a DM or email me. You can find that on my website. Shoot me a DM, whatever it is, if you want to chat more. And be glad to.
Coolest pages, by the way.
I do love the
coolest pages.
Yeah.
Full Vantage Podcast. This is my good friend David Gerber's perspective and vantage point. And I hope you feel more full after hearing this conversation. Connect with us, the book. We're on a journey. Let's go. Thanks for joining us.